You probably don't know that some of the systems guiding your next flight were designed in the 1970s, before smartphones, before Wi-Fi, and even before the internet. Let that sink for a minute. Because the aircraft which are lifting hundreds of people into the sky today may rely on code written when cloud meant weather and not servers. For years even, certain aircraft's navigation database were updated using floppy disks. But before that unsettles you mid-boarding, here's the twist. The age of the software is not a weakness. Hi.
Hi, I am Dee Dee, and I am so ready for this one. Because the wild part is, modern flying is safe not because planes are shiny and new, but because the whole system is obsessed with backup plans, checklists, and learning from every tiny mistake.
Yeah, exactly. There are many elements which contributes to the air safety, and we will dive deep into many of these aspects, but mainly looking at the point, how is it possible that a 60-year-old software is guiding your airplane till today? And we will also explore, is it possible to use this mindset and apply this in our daily jobs, maybe at your work? We will look deep into this. Are you in for it, Didi?
Oh, I am in. Give me the seat by the wing and the dramatic soundtrack, because this is such a good paradox. You are trusting your life to software that is older than most passengers, and yet the experience is boringly safe.
Then let's dive in. Okay, I want to start this one with a story. In 2018 and 2019, two nearly brand new Boeing 737 MAX aircraft crashed. It was the Lion Air Flight 610 and the Ethiopian Airlines Flight 302. Together, 346 people lost their lives. And the cause? A software system called
MCAS, short for Maneuvering Characteristics Augmentation System. MCAS is software on certain Boeing 737 MAX jets that can automatically nudge the nose of the plane downward in a very specific situation.
They introduced a new software, which of course also was exhaustively tested and refined, but it brought new variants in it.
A bit of context on the why it existed part. The MAX had larger engines mounted differently, which changed the aircraft's aerodynamics in certain parts of the flight envelope, especially at higher angles of attack. Instead of changing the whole airframe and handling qualities in a way that would ripple into training and certification, Boeing added MCAS so that, in those specific conditions, the airplane would behave more like earlier 737 models, from the pilot's perspective.
Okay, what happened in both of the crashes is that a faulty sensor sent incorrect data, and MCAS actually believed the plane was stalling, and it automatically forced the nose downward. And then pilots started fighting the system, and MCAS reactivated, and the aircraft entered in a dive.
In a high workload, low altitude situation, you are diagnosing a stall warning that is not real, while an automation you may not be expecting is physically changing the trim underneath you. The crashes were not a bad programming language story. They were a systems and culture story about assumptions, incentives, and how safety arguments get made. One crucial mindset in aviation is, you assume sensors will lie, humans will be overloaded, procedures will be misunderstood, and then you build layers so one bad input cannot quietly become a catastrophic chain. When that mindset slips into, it will probably be fine, or the pilot will catch it, you get a design that is technically clever, but operationally brittle.
I want to speak more about the culture that made flying safe. And the deeper explanation doesn't lie in the programming, but it's in the mindset.
Engines fade, metal still, questions hanging over steel. Switch by switch, word by word, nothing lost, don't erase.
In his book Black Box Thinking, Matthew Syed argues that aviation becomes extraordinarily safe not because humans stopped making mistakes, but because the industry transformed how they respond to them. Every commercial aircraft carries a flight data recorder, the black box, right? And of course, when an accident occurs, investigators from organizations like the National Transportation Safety Board reconstruct events in forensic detail. So every switch position, every voice recording, sensor data, mechanical sequence, everything is reconstructed, and the root causes which led to the accident are investigated. And maybe it might not even be an accident, can also be an unsafe situation. And then they publish all this finding globally. The goal of this is not to punish, but to enable progress.
Remember, so we don't forget.
This is the good stuff. You're basically teeing up the aviation is safe because it treats failure like data argument, and it's powerful. The mindset you're describing is a learning mindset institutionalized.
Because every accident becomes a lesson. Every near misses becomes data.
Yes, exactly. When you treat accidents as lessons and near misses as data, you're basically building a feedback loop that makes the whole system smarter over time. The wild part is near misses are like free warnings from the universe. If you capture them honestly, without blame, you can spot patterns before they turn into real damage.
And that's exactly the key point. The one single most important lesson, which sounds obvious, but it is not. Matthew Syed also tells another parallel. He makes the comparison to the healthcare industry, and the contrast is really striking. Medical errors are estimated to be among the leading causes of death worldwide. Yet, historically, many healthcare systems struggled with underreporting. They fear lawsuits, they fear reputational damage, and also this professional stigma, which often disencourages open disclosure of mistakes.
That contrast is the whole story, isn't it? Aviation basically built a culture where reporting a near miss is treated like protecting future passengers, while healthcare has often treated the same admission as a career-ending confession. In hospitals, fear of lawsuits, reputation damage, and professional stigma push people towards silence, so the system loses the very data it needs to prevent the next harm. It's painfully ironic, too, because both domains are high stakes and complex.
The difference is really cultural because aviation reframed error as information, and that reframing changed safety outcome dramatically. And it did not eliminate human imperfection, but it designed a system around it. Now, the software running your aircraft today reflects actually this culture. But it's not old in the sense that it was neglected, but it's mature. Layer upon layer of refinements sit inside those systems. Lessons extracted from decades of analysis and hard-earned experience. They are designed to be predictable.
In aviation, boring is absolutely beautiful. Boring means predictable, deterministic behavior. And that's basically the love language of safety-critical engineering.
Modern tech ecosystems, they celebrate rapid iteration, constant feature expansion, complexity. But aviation avoids unnecessary complexity because this complexity introduced unknown interactions. Unknown interactions introduce risks. And even the once ridiculized floppy disk had an advantage because it was physically isolated. It was air-gapped, immune to remote exploitation. Sometimes what looks outdated is simply disciplined.
Yes, that's the delicious irony right there. In most software culture, complexity is treated like progress because you can ship it, measure it, and brag about it. In aviation, complexity is treated like debt with teeth because unknown interactions are exactly where accidents hide. So they design for predictability, isolation, and failure containment. What looks outdated can be disciplined engineering, where the goal is not novelty, it's confidence.
But now I have a question. What if we build our lives like aviation? What if we design our working environment or even our living environment like aviation does?
They say the sky is unforgiving. Stealing wind, don't care who's right. One small error, one bad decision can disappear into the night. But in the wreckage, there's a ritual.
If we
No
built
blame, no
life like
shame, just
aviation,
light.
you'd feel an immediate shift from move fast to know what is happening. Work would get calmer, more repeatable, and less dependent on heroics because the system would be designed to catch mistakes before they turn into disasters. You'd see checklists everywhere, not as bureaucracy, but as memory aids for high-stakes moments.
Yeah, I think it's very tempting to leave this lesson at 35,000 feet in the air and to just admire aviation culture from the distance. But I think that the deeper story is actually not about the aircraft, but it's about the system that learns. And aviation actually became so safe because it assumed humans would fail and built the learning into a structure. In our working places, for example, in many organizations, for instance, when something goes wrong, the first instinct is the defense, right? You just say, who is responsible? Who did some mistakes? Who did this damage, etc. Energy goes into protecting reputations rather than extracting insights. But aviation inverted actually that dynamics. It normalized reporting errors and it separated failure from shame and it treated near misses as an asset. Imagine you are in a workplace where employees just openly say, yeah, okay, I screwed up this one, or make a most trivial mistake. What if we work in this kind of environment where a worker could admit a tragic failure without fear?
That's the whole secret. Aviation didn't become safe by finding perfect people. It became safe by building a system that expects imperfect people and still protects the outcome. If workplaces copied that, the first thing that would happen is psychological safety would stop being a poster slogan and become infrastructure. You'd separate accountability from blame. What happened? But the default question becomes, what in the system made this error possible, not who do we punish? Near misses would become gold because they are free lessons. And you'd build rituals that make reporting easy, normal, and even respected.
This is a so profound transformation which an organization can live through. Why we cannot start with this easier? That shift in mindset does not make people flawless, but it makes the organization adaptive. And this learning, step by step, it compounds, building efficiency, building productivity, building quality, building failure-free processes.
Yes, and the compounding part is the magic. You are not trying to eliminate human error through willpower. You are turning every error and near miss into an input that hardens the system. So the same class of failure becomes harder to repeat.
So I'm very deep into the lean manufacturing idea and the Toyota production system and leadership. But it is even more harder to really implement it because it is something which is rooted really deep into ourselves, and we need to separate this kind of emotional aspect from the process aspect. And in leadership, the implications are really strong because they embedded already this kind of humility into the processes. You know that checklists exist not because of memory fails, but checklists exist for cross-verification. Leadership cultures built on ego often suppress that assumption. And when mistakes are treated as weakness, then the learning really stops because no one will admit any mistakes. But when leaders openly analyze their own errors, psychological safety increases dramatically.
You're threading the needle perfectly. Lean and aviation both treat humility as a design requirement, not a personality trait. The checklist is basically a formal way of saying, I do not trust my own brain under pressure, and that's normal. And it turns that admission into strength through cross-verification. What would happen in a leadership culture built like that is leaders would model error the way pilots do. State what happened, state what was expected, name the gap, and then invite the system to help close it, without theatrics. The emotional separation you mentioned is the hard part because shame is fast, but learning is slow. So you need rituals that make the slow thing automatic, like blameless after-action reviews, near-miss reporting that is genuinely safe, and a consistent habit of asking what made sense to the person at the time. When a leader can say, "I contributed to this," the room stops acting and starts thinking.
Yeah, right. And the same principles also applies personally, because most individuals, they respond to failure really with a lot of emotion. I failed quietly becomes I'm failure. You think, oh, I failed, I'm not able to do this, and I feel really bad because this. But in aviation, you make this critical distinction because an incident is data and the questions are structured. So, what happened, what condition allowed it, and what safeguards were missing, and how we can prevent it from reoccurring. Applied to life, this same mindset could really transform your setbacks and it creates a learning loop instead of a shame spiral.
Not, "I am a failure," but "a failure happened in this system." Then you can ask the same clean questions. What happened? What conditions made it likely? What guardrails were missing? And what change prevents a repeat? And when you apply that to life, it's almost unfairly powerful. A botched project becomes feedback about scope, assumptions, and process. A money mistake becomes pattern recognition around triggers and timing. A relationship blow-up becomes data about communication defaults, stress load, and unspoken expectations.
So you see how this works. And I hope also you become able to apply this learning of treating the errors as learning opportunities and evolving from there and building systems. It's not never first time right, but it's learning from everything that happened. Not always the most new piece of tech, which is the most reliable and the best, but it's the one which accumulates the most learning.
The code might be old, but the learning loop is modern. Every incident becomes structured knowledge, and that knowledge becomes guardrails, checklists, training, redundancy, and better questions next time. That's the real takeaway for personal life, too. You do not need to be perfect on the first try. You need a routine that captures what went wrong, makes one concrete change, and then actually tests it in the next attempt.
So, yes, there's a 60-year-old code which is flying your plane, but behind that code, there's something far more modern. It's a system that never stopped learning. And that might be the safest idea humanity has ever engineered.
They trace the wires, replay the voices, turn disaster into insight. They don't bury what went wrong, they study it frame by frame. Every scar becomes a signal, every failure gets a name. Open the black box of your heart, don't hide the crash, don't tear it apart. Log the mistake, rewrite the chart, that's how safer systems start. We don't rise because we're flawless, we rise because we learn. Every hard and broken landing is fuel for the return. In boardrooms and in bedrooms, we pretend we never fall. Polish up the presentation, hang perfection on the wall. But growth is in the debrief, in the honest after-action call. What did we miss? What did we assume? What small warning did we ignore? No witch hunts, no defense, just data, truth, and trust. If the cockpit stays transparent, even failure serves the thrust. Open the black box of your mind, leave the ego far behind. Every setback you can find is a blueprint redesigned. We don't rise because we're fearless, we rise because we adapt. Every hard and messy lesson is a system getting mapped. Didn't win by pretending, crashes never came. It won by asking better questions, not by looking for a name to blame. So when your project hits the runway and the landing shakes the frame, don't hide the data in the darkness, turn the error into aim. Open the black box of your life, the doubt, the loss, the strife. Debrief the storm, refine the flight, turn wrong into insight. We don't grow because we're perfect, we grow because we see that every failure lies safety. Every crash is a classroom. Every mistake is a map. The sky is not safer because pilots are flawless. It's safer because they learn. And so can we.